Hello and welcome. My name's Andy Gilbert. I'm the Managing Director and founder of M.A.D Thinking, and I'm delighted you're here to join me for 45 minutes of fast action. And we're going to be focusing on closing the strategy execution gap. So just in case you're not familiar with what we do as an organization, Go.MAD, I should say, stands for Go Make a Difference. Okay, it's a rallying call for change, improvement, acceleration. It's not about staying the same. And as it says on the slide there, our purpose really is to improve your world through better thinking. And what we're going to be focused on today is strategy execution and those hidden gaps, the reasons why things don't always go according to plan. Now, from our world, what we do is we help leaders and teams to think differently. And we typically do that in 60 and 90-day cycles where we invite people to work on sponsored projects so that people learn the methodology as they go, working in real time on real projects that get delivered results to the sponsors. And that's where the magic happens, when people are working in real time, learning and applying. So let's just have a little look about how our thinking, because that's what we specialize in, what goes on in the head manifests itself in terms of actions and then results. So you've probably heard about the Einstein quote. If we keep doing the same things, we keep taking the same actions, it's, the definition of insanity. So what we need to do is to create a loop that breaks through the actions by getting people to think differently, right? Maybe asking better questions inside their head, imagining different outcomes, remembering different things that are more helpful. So the quality of the thinking impacts the quality of the actions impacts the results. And basically that's what we do over 60 or 90 days with an organization. I'm going to give you some examples later on in this session relating to each of the points that I cover. So a little bit about me to know. My job title, MD or Chief Thinking Engineer. We don't have consultants in our business, or we've been going for 30 years. They're thinking engineers because their job is to engineer people's thinking. I'm a researcher, cognitive psychology. Why do people behave the way they do during change, when change is imposed on them, and when they go in pursuit of their goals? So this model here is what's called the results framework, and that's based on 7 key success principles that people naturally apply whenever they go from point A to point B. And we use that to underpin the 60 and 90-day challenges. I'm also an author. I've written about 19, 20 books or so. Most popular ones, The Art of Making a Difference, Coaching and Managing Change. They're the most popular ones at the moment. So I do a lot of speaking, facilitation, coaching, and I'm a designer, a creator. It might be that one day I'm producing a pack of cards. The other day it might be AI software design so that we can spread and embed the methodology across thousands of people. So at heart, when my mum says, what do you do, Andy? My mum's got Alzheimer's, by the way. So kind of she asks me this every month or so. Rather than say I'm a solution-focused pragmatist, passionate about creating light bulb moments, what I actually say is, Mum, I basically teach adults how to ask great questions. And my mum, who's an ex-school teacher, goes, oh, questions are great, Andy. Yeah. And then we have a conversation about how we can help people with questions. So a month later, I explain it again. But this little model here just explains, we do 4 things inside our head when we think. We ask questions, we talk in statements, we remember the past, and we imagine the future. So if we can engineer those components to be more helpful, right, we can then apply them to business projects, and using this framework, we can build robust plans to help them get there. If you haven't seen my TEDx talk, either go to the homepage of our website or Google it, The Art of Making a Difference, 17 minutes, and that'll give you a really great insight into that model. So what we're focused on today, though, is this leadership responsibility. Okay, we're going to look at that, and we're going to look at that in the context of a number of areas that we can diagnose and align around. The 7 execution gaps, that's what we're mainly going to focus on. And then I'm going to invite you to identify which of those gaps are most relevant to your organization so you can decide what to do about them. So let's just, that was an interesting click, Andy. There we go. Let's just go back and have a vote on something. Okay, I'm just going to put a poll up here, and let's just put this one up. I'm going to launch this. Okay, which of these best describes the current state of your organization's strategy? Just pick one of them. You've got a clear strategy, and leaders are on track executing it. Or you've got a clear strategy, but execution is inconsistent or slow. Maybe your strategy is not so clear. Gaps are appearing. Or maybe that it's not so clear and execution is mixed on that. Or you're currently developing a new strategy. So just vote for which of those best describes your organization. Okay, I'm just going to end that poll. Okay, the majority of people are focused on a not so clear strategy existing and execution is mixed. Okay, so clarity of strategy, yeah, vast majority on that one. That's jumped out. Okay, let's just go back from that. Well, let's just talk a little bit about most organizations. They don't fail on strategy, right? They fail on the execution of strategy. And it's really, I want to get under that to see what can we do to really prevent that happening or to identify the reasons why it happens. So I'm going to introduce you to a leadership framework. And we use this as a diagnostic and analytical framework. And I'm going to go around this very quickly in 5 or 6 minutes, what would normally take me half a day to do with an exec or leadership team. So leadership responsibility, what does that mean? Well, it means really aligning. Let me just get my little highlighter, laser pointer here. Okay, so we might explore questions like, what are we responsible for? What does leadership responsibility mean in this organization? And inevitably, one of the things that it leads to is clarity. Clarity of the vision, the objectives, the strategy that leaders are responsible for. So, you know, what's happening to not provide that clarity? We'll look at that later. The organizational reason why, this is its purpose. What are we here for? This is the why, this is the what. So it's very useful to get leaders to explain where we're going and the reason why for that. And if you can join those 2 sentences together, it really helps people and influences them. Now, the key thing is, how congruent are your leaders in actually saying that? You know, if we had 5 leaders, would they all say pretty much the same thing and be on the same page? Now, instead of self-belief, what goes on in a head, we have the organizational belief, right? The thoughts that exist in the minds of many, and then how those thoughts manifest themselves in terms of actions day to day, the way that we work. That is your organizational culture, and that is the collective beliefs of everyone. So is your current culture helping and enabling the vision, or is your current culture holding it back, right, and preventing it from being successful? Because as leaders, your responsibility is to ensure, actually, we need to do something about the culture if it needs fixing. Let's look at the next one then. So we normally talk about, when we're helping people build 60 and 90-day plans, possibility thinking, prioritizing, building in the time to take the action on the key priorities. Now that's day-to-day management tasks. So what is the quality of the day-to-day management thinking and planning? Is it joined up with the vision and objectives where we're going? And that's where we can introduce 60 and 90-day improvement challenges relevant to the strategy that we've got there. Now, the managers don't have to do that all on their own. Okay? Oh, the leaders, of course, are sponsoring. They're sponsoring these 60 and 90-day challenges and engaging in that. But the managers are going, I want to engage my people in this. How do we engage hundreds, thousands of people in actually making a difference? Well, they can. They might have 30-day challenges. We've developed AI-enabled software so that everybody can have a 60 or 90-day challenge and learn these key principles so that they can make a difference in that time frame. And of course, they need to be communicated to. This is what the vision is. This is where we're going, and linked with it, this is the reason why. So the leaders also need to give that positive message to the people, not just to the managers. So we need to think about the communication channels there, what message is being received, how proactive are these leaders in engaging these people. Now, that might seem a lot. And so when I'm working with exec and leadership teams, myself and my team, we're asking the question, are you up for the journey? Are you up for the journey? Because this isn't going to happen overnight. We're not going to change the culture in 30 or 60 days, but actually a series of repetition of 60 and 90-day improvement things, people start to think differently. So the question is, are you up for it? How strong is your reason why? Now, if you've got questions at any stage, please put questions into the Q&A and they'll pop up in front of me, and either I'll take them then or at the end I'll answer your questions. Okay. So here we go. 7 hidden execution gaps. So this is research done really over the last 6 months, where we've been looking at organizations and saying, what's the reason why strategy does not get executed? So this is a little gap analysis. I'm going to go through these 7 very quickly, and then what we'll do is we'll deep dive for a couple of minutes into each one, and I'll give examples relating to that. So as we go around these for the first time, just notice for yourself, which one seems most relevant to my organization now? And just note the number down. So number 1, excuse me, thinking and decision making, right? This is when assumptions go untested and priorities blur. Okay, so what are people assuming maybe about the strategy? What assumptions are not being checked out? If that's relevant for you, make a note. The leadership and ownership. This is when accountability and alignment slip. So we might have something agreed, but it's started to slip. This is where I even hear of people saying, oh yes, we've parked it in the drawer. Okay. Communication and engagement, where it's been agreed at the top, everybody's on the same page, but then it gets dissipated, misaligned when it's cascaded, right? People are not engaged. There might be a sticky middle where somehow it doesn't get through to the people on the shop floor. Capability and systems. This is where teams lack a shared way to plan and act. Then we look at structure and process. And this is where, we want to do this one thing for strategy, but our operations and our processes are run in a completely different way. Cultural and psychological gaps. This is where this is all in the head, where people believe that it's maybe not possible, okay? And their behavior is trapped in a treadwheel of this is the way that we've always done it. And finally, measurement and feedback. Might be measuring the wrong things here. Okay, maybe progress is being tracked in activities, not in the real things that make the difference in impact. So those are the 7 things. Let's just have a look at which one. Just put it in chat, actually. And just put which numbers there are currently impacting your organization, and we'll see if there's a bit of a trend. So just look at the numbers there and just put the numbers in, and I'll wait till you've done that. Let's see what numbers. It might be one thing, maybe more. And what we'll do is we'll come back to this at the end when I've gone into this in a bit more depth, and we'll just see then as a little bit of a contrast. Okay, so I'm looking here, and number 3, yes, is coming through. Number 5, number 4 is also popular. Okay, a little bit of number 1 and number 6. Okay, so that seems to be the pattern for today. Okay, so let's deep dive into these. So we're going to look at the first one, and this is thinking and decision-making gaps. I'm going to go through 5 areas here, give you an example or two on each one. So flawed assumptions, strategies built on outdated, incomplete, or untested premises. The one that immediately goes through my mind here is we do quite a bit of work in the law sector. And one of our major clients there at the moment is realizing that the partners and the model that they built on, which is typically on 6-minute billing, with AI coming in, what they're finding is a lot of their clients are using various AI to do their thinking and planning and coming in with drafted contracts, which obviously they just want checking over and they want to pay half the price. So, could this have been predicted a while ago? Yes, it could. But they've also got AI systems in there where they've got lots of administrators doing things where the AI is going to replace that. So just last week, I was chatting with the client and saying, how could we engage 200 of the more junior people in a 90-day challenge to identify what the AI means for their job and what the added value would be that they can bring into the organization through this. So this was very much a flawed assumption that was made by, it's still being made by partners, to be honest, on that. Maybe that's unclear logic change. Leaders can't explain the causal links between strategy and outcomes, right? So it's right, we've got the strategy here, but what that means is we need to be doing A, B, C, and this is the outcome that it will bring. Sometimes, the over-optimism goes back to that law firm a bit as well. We assume things, maybe the market response isn't there. Maybe it's poor prioritization. Everything feels important. Nothing gets done well. Or cognitive fragmentation. Lovely phrase that. I really like that. This is where the strategy is there, but it's interpreted differently in different ways. And there's not the checks and balances there. So if you've got any questions on that, please put it in the Q&A. Let's look at leadership and ownership. Okay, so what we're going to look at here is 4 things. Okay, first of these is misalignment. This is lack of a shared mental model for execution. So, obviously we use the Go methodology, go make a difference, and that to really glue people together. But the one I want to share with you, or a couple of them really, let's look at these 3 together. Delegated ownership, fear of accountability, and the leadership bandwidth. Okay. I'm working with an NHS trust at the moment. The team, there's 5 of us on this project, and the trust needs to save £55 million. Okay, government really wants that money back. How do they find it? You can imagine that there is a low level of self-belief that this can be achieved, but there's also a bit of fear accountability. So 3 weeks ago, we were working with 53 most senior leaders there, and some of them did not want to commit to a number. Okay, right? A bit about, what would happen. So, our job was to really get them to focus and really take responsibility for this plan. The plan is going to be submitted, right? We've got numbers. We need to really own those numbers. So, that's quite a common thing. And also in the NHS, there's an incredible amount of competing demands happening there. So it's easy sometimes for leaders to bury their head and say, I've got stuck in the busyness. Let's look at the next one. So we're going to look at communication and engagement. Okay. Messages lost in translation, never landing, disconnected middle management, passive communication, siloed storytelling. I'm going to tell you a story here, one of my favorite, going back to the year 2009, so quite a while ago, working global engineering business. And the reason I remember it was 2009 was that we were doing an exercise in this division of the business where I asked the 11 people in the room to write down on a post-it note what the vision was and by what date it would be achieved. And then we went round the group. And the first person said 2010, i.e., the next year, 1 year vision. The next person talked about a 5 year vision. By the time we'd gone round a couple more, we had 5 variations of the vision, but the date this was. And one person said the number 2030. And people looked at this person. We've now got a range of 20 years between 2010 and 2030. I said, nobody leave the room. Right? Can you imagine if the 1,100 people or so that worked in this division could hear this conversation? Do you think they'd have helpful thoughts or hindering thoughts? They can't even agree on the date and the time scale here. There are bound to be gaps. So how joined up are you, and what checks are done about those messages that are being given out? Let's move on. We're going to look at capability and systems now, okay? And this is where teams lack really a shared way to plan and act. So let's put some things up here. I'll let you just read these while I take a cuppa. Okay. So an example to give you here. In the second peak of COVID, we got a phone call into the office requesting help from the team from another NHS trust in difficulty whose e-rostering system had broken. What this meant was they couldn't get enough nurses onto the wards, and in history it was the second peak time ever. And I said to the deputy chief nurse to do something that was going to sound completely counterintuitive. And every bone in her body would scream out, no, that's not possible. And I said, the only way to break through this is we need to take your managers out for 2 days, not all at once. So we took 14 ward managers out one week, 14 more ward managers out the next week to do some thinking. Because, in those crisis situations, the brain cannot do long-term planning. It starts to close down. So we need to take them out, relax them, and say, we're going to do 2 days thinking on how to fix this. And they did. And they, over the next 60 and 90 days, the key success indicators went from red to amber to green, and they saved £758,000 on agency costs during that 90 days. And I've got an amazing video of literally when the results are announced, nurses are jumping off the floor. Okay. So they were reliant on tools and tech. It wasn't working for them. They hadn't got time to fix it. They didn't know how. Remember what I said about Einstein? Right? We need to break the cycle of actions, results, and actions. Keep doing the same thing and we need to create thinking time for our people. Let's go on and look at the next one. Structural and process gaps. Okay, this is where strategy and operations they just run on different tracks. So let's have a look at some of the areas here. Okay, strategy not integrated into the operational plans. Okay, we've got the strategy, it's stuck in the drawer. This year, I've had two, all right, exec members in totally different organizations admit that was the case. We've done the strategy, but it's business back to usual now, but just coping with the day job. Okay. Overcomplicated governance, bureaucracy slowing down decision making. Doing some work, well, the team were working with a local authority, and this was just before Christmas, and we were working on a 60-day challenge with them. And it transpired they were looking at 6 different projects they had on the go for these 60 days. And one of them was about their overcomplicated governance. And we found out they had 14 levels of procurement sign off. And 3 of these levels were for under £100, different levels under £100 that people could sign off, right? And the chaos this was creating was just incredible. So anyway, they sorted that out within 60 days. So let's have a look at some of the other things here. Structural and process gaps. Okay. Incentives misaligned. And this is an interesting one, where it could be we're rewarding locally, but we want business success. It could be that individuals are getting rewarded when it should be team success. And this shows up in the reason why strategy is not being executed. So sometimes it could be short-termism. We're chasing this in the short term, actually, but what that means is our longer term strategic progress is not being maintained. So just have a thought if that's relevant to you and your organization. So we're going to move on now to cultural and psychological gaps. Okay, we've touched on this a little bit, but this is where beliefs and behavior don't match the ambition, the strategic ambition there. So change fatigue, too many things on the go at the same time. We're overloaded with initiatives. 3 years ago, we were working with a large fintech business, and we were working with them on a cultural change that was needed. But what was happening was there was 3 major changes happening in the organization at the same time. This was a global company, business in 22 countries, and the main base was Germany. And they were actually selling the organization. So there was a sale imminent for that organization. But at the same time, they were implementing, after 3 years, a new IT system. Whilst at the same time, people were being instructed to return to work from working at home. This is post-COVID, right? And there was a massive head office in Germany that was underpopulated, and the chief exec wanted people back in there. So there was massive change happening at the same time, and people were tired. They were really tired, and that was impacting. So we were working with them on 60-day cycles here because we needed to get a lot done. We developed an Engage and Empower program where all the leaders checked in every 14 days with us. This was in groups of about 10, 12 people. And we were looking at what's hot, what's new, and what's on your mind. These were the 3 questions we asked people to come, and they would submit their thoughts in advance. About 50% of them did. And then we ran a facilitated 1-hour session around those hot topics to bridge the gaps. And what this was doing, it was building their belief, right? Because every 14 days, we were focused on making small differences happen to close the gap here. And we've just got an amazing case study just saying, from the chief operating officer, this was the first time ever that a massive project had ever been delivered on time, right? And on budget, delivering what it was meant to do. Really brilliant project there. So you've got to also increase people's belief that they can talk openly and freely about things, creating that psychological safety. So questions, thoughts, please put them into the Q&A, not the chat for this one. Right, so what are we going to look at now? We're going to look at the seventh one, which is about measurement and feedback. This is where progress may be tracked in activity rather than impact. Very common that I see, the team here sees that clients are not necessarily tracking the right metrics. And I've got to say, one of the biggest culprits of this is HR departments. Quite frequently, we see things, X percentage of managers and leaders are completing their appraisals. It's 40%, it's 60%, it's 70%. Never, never do we hear them saying about the quality of those appraisals or PDRs that they're happening. So, are they tracking the right thing? I would much rather have 60% being done, but they be fantastic, than 95% being done and they're rubbish. So the question here is, what are we tracking and what impact is that having on our strategy? So hence, that's the reason why we like to track 30, 60 and 90 days. When we're working with managers and leaders, it's 60 and 90-day challenges. Sometimes in fast-moving organizations like retail, we'll go down to 30-day challenges there. Measurement, measurement, measurement. It's the seventh key principle about making a difference, right? Take action and measure the results. Some organizations, the metrics actually exist, but they're not connected to the decision making. There's so much data there that people are blind to it, or they're picking out the wrong data to track. And sometimes, again, that busyness comes in, that people are not taking time to review and learn the lessons, okay? And therefore, it just keeps snowballing on there, okay? So those are the 7 areas. Let's just go back to these execution gaps. Now, you've got these gaps, and, we're coming up to quarter of the way through the year. And these should be either appearing or starting to appear, or they might still be hidden. So let's just do a quick poll now. Now that I've gone into this in a little bit more depth, I'm going to invite you to look at the most important ones there. Okay. And you can have more than one choice here. So in your organization, which of these would you say now are the most important gaps that you can identify? Okay, I normally wait for 80% of the people that are present to complete the poll, and then I'll share it. Right, I think we're about there. Let's just end that poll. So I can tell you that it's actually the top 3 are the most common: thinking and decision-making gaps, leadership and ownership gaps, and the comms and engagement gap. Okay, make a little note of that. This is part of my trending research that I always do. Let's look then at closing the gaps. That's the next obvious thing. So the missing piece, a shared thinking framework. I touched on this earlier. This is what we call the results framework. This was developed in just before, well, where are we now? 1998, 1999, the research. And I wrote this, my best-selling book, The Art of Making a Difference. 7 key principles. When you can get managers and leaders sharing these principles, getting clarity, checking their belief and reason why, and then considering the ideas, the possibilities, the options, and then involving people, you can then take action and measure results. So let's apply this to strategy execution. Okay. So we can ask ourselves the question here, okay, what are our strategy execution gaps? That gives us a reason why, doesn't it? A reason why to do something differently rather than stay the same. We could then say, what are the success measures? What do we want to achieve within a time period to close that gap? And then self-belief question, how achievable do we believe that to be? And how could we possibly build the confidence of people? Okay. Well, when we were working with the NHS Trust 3 weeks ago, over the 2 days, we worked through this whole model looking to close that gap. And we were asking them every 2 hours over those 2 days what their level of self-belief was on the 9 projects that they were working on going through this. And I can tell you that the self-belief changed, right? From when it started, it was an average of 4.9, and we got it to an average of 7.5 within 48 hours. So once you've got the clarity, you know what you want, what you really, really want, we can then start to look at the possibility areas. And this is where we do the possibility thinking. And this is where people start having light bulb moments and opening their minds up to the assumptions, the things maybe that they hadn't ever considered. They figure out ways to overcome obstacles, right? They work out the most important priorities, the real key issues, and then figure out who to involve. So if you imagine we had 53 people in the room here, and suddenly we created space for them to all work on the important priorities rather than book meetings for 4 weeks' time. So problems and issues were getting resolved within 10 and 15 minutes in a dynamic period of time. Again, it's not just creating the time to think, but it's getting the right people in the right place to think. Then we can think, you know, how can we get the buy-in from these people, and what are the key tasks that are going to go into our plan, and who's going to take responsibility for what? All that gets sorted, and then we can then start to say, right, over the next 60 to 90 days, let's measure our progress, right, in cycles. They're measuring every 2 weeks, and then we'll have a big review after the 60 days. So that's basically how to go make a difference about strategy execution. All right, let's get into a summary of what we've done today and think about what you want to do to take action to go forward. Right, you could share the insights from what you've taken away from today with your leadership team. That's one thing. Or if you want to, we run these on a fortnightly basis. You could invite them to the next breakfast session. That's going to be on the 27th of March. If you wanted to go deeper in this, you could join me for a deeper dive on a strategy execution day. We run these at our headquarters in Leicestershire. And, you know, if you're a senior leader in an organization and maybe wanted to bring a colleague along and look at these for 4 or 5 hours, then they could leave with a much more detailed action plan. Or if you've got a need to move faster than that, you know, just give us a call, let us know, and have a conversation with us, and we'll do some individual work with you to help your thinking. The next execution leadership breakfast, as I mentioned, same time, 2 weeks' time, and the next day that we're running is on the 20th of April. But as I say, if you need help before then, you want to engage in a conversation, just let us know. We can book a couple of hours with you or your team and get them together and give them some thinking. Right, that's it. So what questions have you got for me that you would most like answered on absolutely anything that I've touched on today? please let me know which were. There's a question that inevitably comes up when I run sessions like this, so I'll answer that one first. And the question is, how do you decide the length of challenges? Sarah said, you've mentioned 60 days and 90 days. How do I know which one is right for my organization? Okay. Two things that we base this on. What is the current type of organization and its reporting cycles? Sometimes organizations have to report to the city on a quarterly basis. Sometimes they're working on key performance indicators and quarterly cycles, so that would be a natural fit. Sometimes the organization might be privately owned or private equity owned, and they can work faster. So the cycle might be 60 days, right? If it's a retail organization and very fast moving, it might be 30 days. So it's really that fit. What would work for the sector? Certainly, if we work in the public sector, it tends to be 90 days, albeit, whenever I talk to chief execs, I say, how fast do you want to go? And some of them say, no, 60 days. We want 60-day improvement cycles to get things going. So it's a judgment call on that. When we started working with police forces, we started with 90 days. We found they didn't do much for the first 30 days, right? So we left with a 60-day challenge anyway. Now, when we work with police forces, it's 60 days and we get them working straight away and reviewing it at a 30-day point. So Sarah, I hope that answers your question there. I've got another question from Paul. It's a very lengthy question about cultural change over multi-sites. I've got a lot of experience in that, Paul, and what I'll do with you separately is I'll share a model with you about how you can embed something using 12 factors over an 18 to 24 month period, but I'll do that separately. So they're the two questions that I've got today. So unless there's any further questions, all right, I'll give you 30 seconds to add something in if you want to. We then focus on what difference will you make as a result of being here, spending 45 minutes with me on a Friday morning. So if there's no further questions, make a note. You've got my contact details there. You can email me. Kate, who has been running the webinar behind the scenes today, will send you info about future events that you can join and that you can share with other leaders. So I wish you a great day. And on that note, as my mother always taught me to say, thank you for having me. And as my father always taught me to say, now go forth and make a difference. Okay, have a great day. And we'll be out of here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.